Hi guys, today I'm going to show you how I create snow effect. I'm going to use this model of a Puma armoured car from World War II. Fortunately I don't know the manufacturer, I picked it up second hand. It's an all metal kit, it's fully assembled when you start off, so it just made my life a bit easier. I've modified it a little. If you look, you can see I've added the white paint over the top. I've used a Citadel layer paint there to actually give the effect of whitewash. That works quite nicely rather than using a base paint, which is what I've done in the past. I've also added a load of Stirland mud. You can see there I've added it into the wheels, the front, again, the wheels, and on the rear. And I've also used a bit of foam card, which I'm going to use as the base, and I've pre-put the Stirland mud down already. I did try using the experiment of using the wheels which rotate to provide the snow effect with the mud being churned up. Unfortunately that hasn't worked particularly well. Ironically it worked on the bit that's going to be covered when I actually assemble it. So the first thing to do is we're going to assemble our snow material. Use a variety of bits and pieces. Bicarbonate of soda. Find this really helpful. It's a really nice snow effect. This one's well out of date. It only ever gets used for snow effect. So I'll put a spoonful of that on. We'll add some wood glue to that. Standard PVA glue. This is where I find that it's all blocked up. And then some cheap white paint. I've just used some cheap face painting, bizarrely. You don't want to be using your best paint on this because it is going to get used up at quite a rate of knots. Then you need to mix it all up. I tend to use an old stirrer. Just mix it all together. We get a nice effect. So there we're getting a nice paste-like effect. Then very simply we just spread it over where we want it. So let's start with the base. Now one caution I did find with this, much as I like this technique, I tried it with some little lumps in the ground which I used some cork tiles for. Unfortunately cork tile tends to leak and stain, which wasn't something I was aware of. So you can see that's going on quite nicely there. Going on, I snuff it right up and just slightly into the Stirland mud. Building it up just to either side, just on either side of it, it really does give that effect that this has then been pushed down on the tracks. You actually want a little bit of it in the tracks mixed in. It just gives that little dabs there, just mixes in. That's a bit big there, so what I'm going to do is just use my finger, just put a light mix of it into there, and again it just looks then like the mud and snow is mixed together. Worst case, if you miss any of this, you can always go back and add to it. So make sure you get nice coatings, particularly around the edges, anywhere where the model isn't going to cover up. When we get into the centre in a minute, we can just do that very quickly. We can just cover that up with a light coating because it's going to be hidden underneath the model. And to be perfectly honest, since I'm painting this for wargaming standard, if somebody is actually getting it to that level, checking my miniature on the table, I'm really not going to be that bothered. That's the bit where I get all of my fingers. Useful if you know how far the model is going to protrude towards the front of the base, because then you know just how far you have to do the thicker mount. There is looking good. So we'll make sure now we get the centre bit as well. Nice thing with the foam core board is it's not going to make a lot of difference if I don't put it on completely, because it's still at the end of the day going to look white and slightly rough because I took the paper topping off. Quite nice if you actually get the slight lines in the snow. You don't want it perfectly smooth. Have a look at snow, see what it looks like for real, and you'll see it tends to clump a little and you get those little drifts. So that's fine. We're quite happy if we've got those. If you're doing this for a diorama, you could even have a couple of infantry alongside, in which case make a little tool out of whatever you've got to hand, and you can actually even put boot prints in then. So that's the base done. Let's just do a very quick check by putting the vehicle on top. Yeah, I quite like that. You can see the snow, you can see the tracks. So let's apply a bit of the snow to the vehicle. Now, think where snow would accumulate. It's often worth having a look at photos if you're not sure. So you often get a bit going particularly into the recessed bits on wheels and tracks. Tracks are great. I'll put a picture up of the Tiger I did the other day so you can actually see what I mean with that. A little bit much on some of these, but that's just giving a nice little, that mud and snow effect mixing in. So we'll do the same on the other side. Not much on there now. If you want to get a finer tool, you just need to snap the stick in a slightly different place so you can cut it down and you'll get that effect. So that's looking what I want on there. So it's mainly going to be mud that's churned up, but there'll be little specks of snow in it, so we'll put a few little patches on like that. Just down a little. One little trick I find when you're doing something like this, often worth using the mud and the snow to actually cover up things like the license plate on a vehicle, because if I cover that up, what I then get is a vehicle that's a bit more generic. It's not fixed. And if you're a wargamer and you're building multiple of the same one, then what you can actually do is, of course, is actually have the same model without having to mess around changing number plates and things. So let's just think about where snow is likely to gather on top of a vehicle. Try and put it into some of the little recesses. I think I'm going to put it down while I do this. So little bits of snow on the engine covers there, just tucked away in the corners. A few little bits there. There's a little hole on that model, so I'll use that to cover it up. So you just got a couple of little patches of snow. And the nice thing is, it'll actually hit the point where you start going, is that snow or is that camouflage? Because that's what's going to happen in reality. Try and put some into the little recesses on the jerry cans. Always useful if you're a model builder and you're not particularly good like me. This is your chance to actually cover up some of the mistakes. A bit more snow in there, a bit much there. Let's get some of that off. So where there's a little bit of a recess, just think about would snow gather there. Things like hatches and things, they'll generally have taken it off. But a nice little effect there. What we'll do, we'll add a bit now to the wheels. There. Not a lot, because that's going to be mainly mud in there. And what I'll do once I've finished this, and it's dried, is I'll actually add a little bit more mud, mixing it in with the snow. And there we go, we'll leave that for a minute for that to dry, and then we'll come back to it. Another trick you can do if you want to get a slightly mixing effect is just use an old brush and just stipple it on. Now what will now happen is that will just mix together a little. So stipple it there. Good practice to start on the bit that you can't see, get your technique right, and then shift to a bit that you can see, that you're happy with. And there you can see we're just getting that little bit of a mixing effect now. And there we go, we're getting a bit of a mix there now. You can use that just a little bit. And what we're going to do is get right inside between the wheels for a little bit there. Just get that little bit into the treads. You can do exactly the same with mud. It's one reason I don't fix the vehicle down until I've done this. If you've got one with rotating wheels, it'll help you get into all those little bits there. I love this effect when you apply it to tracks. It works incredibly well when you apply it to tracks. And that brush will clean out reasonably well with water, so we'll leave that to soak for a second or two, because it does tend to stick a little bit.